guys? Mike Gonzalez here from the Wellness Bucket. Big time excited to be speaking with Val or Valerie. Val, what do you prefer, Val or Valerie?
Val.
Val.
Either's fine though.
Perfect. I usually call you Val anyways, but here with Val Groth, and big time excited to have her here. So Val, thanks so much for being here with us.
Great to be here, Mike.
Now I'm going to read. I'm just going to full disclosure. I'm actually going to read because I always get fearful that I'm going to mess up like the your intro. So I'm just going to read what I have here from you.
Go for it.
Val is she's a former Chicago public school social worker and now the founder of the Ryan Banks Academy, which we'll definitely be chatting about today during our call. And what is it? It's a nonprofit dedicated to building the first residential school for underserved youth in Chicago. That's super cool. In addition to your work with the Ryan Banks Academy, you also run a life coaching practice where you work with clients from around the world to overcome fear, gaining confidence, and making massive transformational changes in their life, which, again, awesome. You're an acclaimed international speaker and hold a bachelor's degree in psychology, and a master's in social work. And if that's not enough, educational leadership. So very well schooled. So Val, again, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it.
Sure thing. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I want to dive in today with you. I'm really excited for a lot of reasons, but the Wellness Bucket, we're talking about, hey, creating a healthy mind, healthy body in order to, create our healthy business that as entrepreneurs we're looking to do. And there's a lot I want to get into with you, but out of the gate, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, on your valeriegroth.com page, in your about section, you mentioned in there as a kid, out of the gate, you knew, hey, there's something about entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur that I want to be. Like, I'm curious, like, what at a young age, what was it about entrepreneurship that made you know right then and there you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
It's a funny question because I did know that was always part of me. It's hard to kind of articulate that, I guess. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be innovative. I wanted to change lives and help people and make a difference in the world. I think the creativity was a big part of it. Like, I think we think of creativity as being like artists and people that are creating like on those kind of mediums. But I think just the idea of making something new for the world was really intriguing for me. So for me, the initial idea of being an entrepreneur was an inventor, like making a product. And I had all these crazy ideas, like I know a lot of us probably did as kids. And then it segued into like selling my dad's vegetables from his garden to the neighbors and things like that. But what happened was, maybe I'm getting ahead of your next questions, but I didn't know anyone who was an entrepreneur. And that got me really stuck. And so everyone that I knew, my parents' friends, all had 9-to-5 jobs. And so it was kind of what you do in my community is you go to college and you get a great job. And so I had honestly no idea how to be an entrepreneur and didn't do it until later in life when I found podcasts and the websites. And I found examples of what that looked like. But that was always kind of who I was. But I took this long detour to get back to where I am now, I think, because I just didn't know how to follow that path.
Yeah, it's interesting. Usually, especially like you said, if the blueprint, and that was the same way, if the blueprint was like, hey, you just go to school, you go to get a job, and this is kind of what you do. So that blueprint that doesn't exist, and if others around you aren't doing it as well, I totally get it. I was the exact same way as you. Speaking of entrepreneurship, I want to dive. This is where I get excited, to chat with you about because now. And I say this, and I mean it, not to put you on the spot or make, embarrass you, but you're a big time, awesome entrepreneur now. And I'll tell you why I think that. And this is where I want to dive into the Ryan Banks Academy because, whenever the words like commitment or persistence or perseverance come to mind, I seriously think about you and everything you're doing with the Ryan Banks Academy. I'm telling you, it's one thing to start a coaching practice. Like, I know you have one, I have one, and that's by no means is that easy. But we're talking about creating a school, a first-time thing that's never been done. That's a whole different beast. So if you don't mind for just taking us, how did the Ryan Banks Academy come about? What is it? Like, if you could just fill us in there, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Like it's crazy, but it's amazing. It is the coolest thing I've been a part of. The backstory of how that got started is I used to work as a school therapist. So I worked on the far south side of Chicago with really amazing kids going through a lot of trauma. So issues like homelessness, poverty, abuse, neglect, witnessing violence, all these issues that really got in the way of these kids doing well in school. And so I saw that there was this need to build a boarding school to give them a 24/7 place to have a great education, but also to have all those resources and opportunities and just to feel loved and safe in their home environment. And so the thing about that is I saw this need from day one, and I had this idea, well, one day I'm going to do this. I always knew that was within me, and this is kind of like my legacy project for the world. And it was one day I'm going to be retired and have millions of dollars sitting on a table and have tons of time. And as you might have heard the story, a couple years ago, I was at WDS, which is the World Domination Summit Conference, and I heard a speaker that changed everything for me. Do you want me to tell the story?
Sure, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so the speaker was Michael Hyatt, who was a great author, speaker, also an entrepreneur, and he had said that one of us could die in 30 days. And I will never forget where I was sitting in that exact second of my life when he said that, and that was kind of like this wild bricks, where I thought, oh my God, I can't go home and not do this. And I didn't know how the hell to build a school. Like you said, I have a degree to be a principal. They don't teach you that in principal school.
Yeah.
There is no guidebook. There is no cheat sheet. Like, there's entrepreneur crap everywhere, right? But there's no, like, this is how you build a school, let alone how you build a boarding school and how you do it without federal or state funding like we're trying to do it. And there's something happened in that moment where I kind of realized, because there's no guidebook, and because I didn't know how to do it, no one else knew how to do it either. And so it kind of leveled the playing field. And in this crazy way, the magnitude, and because it was so big, it almost kind of made it easier to tackle. Like, no one knows how to do this, so why don't I just try it out and see what happens? That's kind of how things got started. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because, yeah, sometimes not knowing, it's like they say, you know, ignorance is bliss. I mean, in that case, yeah, it's like not knowing, like you don't know what the heck you're up against. And it's interesting, you know, Valerie, this is interesting because it actually kind of leads into what I want to ask you next. And you're in a whole different world because, you know, whenever I look at success and entrepreneurial success, you know, the whole idea is like, hey, man, 20% of it's mechanics. Like, we can go figure out how to do it. And then 80% is just psychology, like staying with it and overcome. In your case, man, you didn't even have the 20%. Like, you were inventing it the whole that's a different world. Speaking of the 80%, you know, like that's necessary to kind of keep going. You know, entrepreneurial world, it's not easy. I can only imagine, Val, in your world, what you're out to create, the amount of just, I guess, rejection, failure, or even fears or doubt. Like, how do you, what's your thing? How do you get past it? Like, how do you keep going? Like, you know, how do you handle, I guess, the rejection or the fear? What do you do to keep going?
Yeah, I love that question. You're totally right. It's all, I think, mindset and how you deal with rejection and how you bounce back from failure. And failures happen every minute of the day. You know, one of my biggest obstacles personally is I'm someone who likes to see results and I like to see outcomes, like you probably are as well. And there will be days and weeks and months that go by and I never feel like I'm seeing that. But then one day something happens, and that's as a result of all of those little things and like chipping away at that wall. But day in and day out, it can be really, really hard. And so, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is making sure to be around really smart, amazing people. And there's really no one in my corner who has done what I've done because we're the first people doing it. So it's not even finding like that replica to follow, but just really positive people who have done other really cool things in the world, and having them to bounce things off of. So an example of that is that I have a mentor who has worked, you know, he's got his own business and he's worked on multiple nonprofits. You know, I'll do something like I'll call my friend when I'm having a challenge, or my mom, and my friend will say, well, that sucks, you know, and they'll just kind of want to vent. My mom will say, oh, honey, like, you need to stop doing so much. Like, but he will actually kind of like allow me to pull back and brainstorm and see what's actually happening. And he's real with me and also very like centering and keeps me positive at the same time. So I think not having people who've been through that space, if you're not surrounded by people who have been on not the same journey, but a journey to do something outside the box like that, it's really easy to stay stuck, I think. Had I not had those people, I couldn't do what I do. Because my friends would have said, well, that's hard. You should just do something more fun. My mom would say, oh, like, you're working too hard. You should just quit. Do something easier. I need the people who've done something else really out of the box to show me that it can be done.
I respect that so much for so many reasons. Like, I just commend you for that, because I'm one who just models things. I like that's how I learn, and I just kind of accelerate is I model things like it's already been done. And in your position, like you said, well, nothing, this hasn't really been done. But you're going to people that can give you that, like, just a support, that encouragement, that motivation to kind of keep you going. That's phenomenal. So huge props to you on that. I have to ask you, I love this question because it's different for everyone. So I know how you keep going. You connect with people who are going to kind of keep you going and motivate. Like, but why? Why do you keep, like, what's driving you? Because I'm sure there's plenty of days you're like, I'm done. Like, what's your call your why, your purpose? Like, why do you keep going? Like, what is it? What is that with you? Like, what's your why? What's your purpose for this?
Yeah, I think my purpose in like this, meaning like RBA, my coaching, my speaking, everything that I do, it all kind of comes down to something around just inspiring possibility. And I think most people go through their life missing out on what lights them up and feeling like they're in this world that's shades of gray. Like, there's this great Valspar commercial, the paint company Valspar, and it's actually really cool to me as a coach, because it shows people who have been colorblind and they get these glasses where they can see color for the first time, which is really fun to see. And that's how I felt making transitions in my life, and how my clients feel going through transformation. And yet I think literally the majority of people, at least in this country, don't get to feel that way, don't get to feel lit up and on fire about what they do. And so my on fire is like bringing that to other people. And so hopefully, the fact that not only do I work as a coach and kind of like teach that, I do like the fact that at least I'm doing that with the school. And so I can kind of have that as an example. Otherwise it sounds kind of like a pyramid scheme. Like, my passion is like help me, like it all cycles back together. But I'm actually doing it because I think that's what we all are here on this planet to do. And I can tell you, this is by far the hardest thing I've done in my life. It is so fun. It is so fucking fun. Sorry if you have to bleep that out. It is.
We're keeping it.
Yeah, it's challenging. It's exciting. I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my life. And I think everyone needs to feel that way. And I think when everyone doesn't feel that way, those people are doing a disservice, not just to themselves, but to everyone else around them. And that's where I think we need to make that shift. Because so many people don't want to do the work that they love because it seems selfish, and they've got to make sacrifices that often can hurt other people, or not hurt, but that can affect others along the way. Maybe it's family or friends. But in the long run, you doing that work that you love and that lights you up is doing this amazing thing for the world around you in so many ways.
You just exuded like so much, like just like passion and why right there. No, I love that. That was awesome. And we're not taking out the F-bomb in there. No, I love that. You just exuded the heck out of like passion, like it's funny just hearing that. Like if anyone wants to see passion, listen to that like last minute and a half. That's it right there. That was awesome. And I just want to point out, you said this is the toughest thing I've done, and then you followed up by saying, but it's the most fun thing. You usually don't hear that.
True.
So there's something to be said, man. When you find what you love, listen to what Val just said. That's pretty incredible, man. So thanks for sharing that. It's inspiring to say the least. I got a question about getting back to entrepreneurship. You've been at this for a while now. What is something, and we all have our own lessons we learn as we go, but what's something that maybe you wish you would have known or been told or taught about entrepreneurship that maybe, you weren't told, that you found out the hard way or whatever, that you just thought like, man, why didn't I know this or was told this sooner? What is there something that you can kind of put your finger on there?
Yeah, I think it does kind of go back to the support system thing. I think having mentors, having a coach, that's huge. Quite honestly, the way that I really got started in this world was listening to podcasts and feeling like I knew these people, even though I didn't know them in person, which I know is how a lot of us got started. So that just kind of surrounding yourself with that information. And I wish I would have done that earlier. Gosh, I feel like there's been so many learning lessons along the way. It sounds like a little thing, but I I definitely like invested in the wrong places. Like I'd spend way too much money on silly things, like getting my website up and running and looking great. It's never going to look great. And honestly, my website now hasn't been updated in years, and I couldn't care less. And I'm probably not going to fix it for another few years because it's not a priority for me right now. But I wasted so much time kind of doing those things the wrong way that I think could have been helped. Had I just gotten out there and started to do what I do, like in the heart of my business, which is just serving clients. And I think people want to get all of like the nuts and bolts and like glitzy stuff out there first. And I did that too. I mean, just it's so tempting, right? But just kind of dive in and figure out what you want to, what it is that you want to do. And I think like when I started my own podcast, I was terrible at first. And I eventually, after doing like over 100 shows, got the hang of it and felt comfortable and was given a lot of accolades for that. But when you start, you suck. And so the simplest way of describing that is like the sooner you start, the sooner you're not going to suck anymore.
Sure.
You know, so if you're stopping because of like your website and stupid stuff like that, or you're stopping because of resistance and fear and internal doubts that you have inside of your own head, like you've got to just get out there and start that sucking phase before, you know,
got to go through it. It's going to happen, but
gotta happen.
Of course, I love that. So definitely connect, and I agree. Sometimes I'm guilty of this myself. Sometimes you think you can do it alone, and you can go further with the right people in your corner. And I couldn't agree with you more. I always laugh about that comment you mentioned, Val, because when we look back at our work, from years ago, I always say two things. One, it is embarrassing when I look at like, oh my goodness, did I write that? Did I create that?
Yeah.
But on that same note, I always say, I still stand by this, that is some of the work I am most proud of, because that was just me taking action. And I'm just saying, was for you, for anyone listening, just, you're always going to look back on your work and be like, oh my goodness. But that's the work that you did, and it got you to where you are today. So I always look back at it embarrassed, but also proud. So
yeah, exactly. It's a great mentality.
That's how I look at it.
Like
I'm curious. So now I know. So when we're talking about healthy mind, healthy body, healthy business, I know because we're friends, and I see it even on social media. Your yoga poses, etc. So I know you're into yoga. You got your exercise routines. I'm curious, in your opinion, how does that, or does it, like your health, your fitness, your yoga, how does that contribute to just you and your mindset and your state and your business? How does that contribute? Does it?
It's everything. It's everything. And I just got done saying that your support system is everything, but I actually think that your physical and mental health has to come first. Has to come first. And if it's not there, having those mentors does something for you. One of the things I do with new clients is go through like core values type exercises, and what mine is, my top core value is what I call vibrancy. So that's kind of being alive in mind, body, and spirit. And that is why I prioritize the things that I do, like yoga and strength training and walking, meditation. And if I didn't do those things, I don't believe that I am ever able to be the best at the work that I do, and I'm not my best in my relationship. So like number one in my life, truly. Like I will, I'm sure people will disagree with that, because there's so many people that work in corporate jobs and they bust their ass and they work 100 hours a week and don't go to the gym and eat like shit. And they think that they're happy because they have these trappings of success. But I will put that vibrancy piece first. I mean, the way I look at it, I will never not do a client call. Like the important things in my work will always get fit in, of course, right? But if I put business first, the vibrancy will fall off the list. If I prioritize the vibrancy, it always happens, and then everything else kind of falls into place after that.
I love, well, there's so much value in there, but the key word there is prioritize it. You make it a priority, and that's such a big thing. And usually people will say, hey, I don't have time or whatnot, and whatever it may be. And I always like to kind of mess with them a little bit and say, okay, well, if you have a child or a dog or whatever, even a pet, let alone a child, if they're home and they have to be fed, or if the kid has to be picked up from school, do you make it happen? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I'm like, okay, that's a priority. That's the same way, if you can view exercise that way, that level of priority, that is huge. So, and you said one more thing, you fit it in, like you say, hey man, you fit it in. So let me ask you this, because we all have this. We all have 24 hours in a day. We're all busy. How do you because you travel, you have a lot going on, it's safe to say that. How do you make it happen because with your schedule?
I get up early. I do make it a priority first thing, because then it happens, and then I feel so much better throughout the day. So I get up at 5, and I am in yoga class by 5, or not I'm in yoga by 6, or boot camp. And then a lot of my meetings, I live in Chicago, a lot of my meetings are downtown, and so I get a lot of walking in, kind of to and from meetings. So I don't know what a lot is. I get like a good 15 to 20,000 steps a day walking, but I love it, and I live in this beautiful city, so it's fun. So a lot of it is kind of like built into my lifestyle purposefully. I could easily take take Ubers, of course, or take the CTA,
Sure.
but I mean, I couldn't dream of doing that. Why would you sit on a bus when you can walk and it's free and it's good for you and get fresh air? So it's kind of like being purposeful, but that morning piece and getting up early and then building it into your day, I think, as well.
Sure.
I'd rather take a walk during my lunch hour than take an hour for lunch and like chill and watch TV for an hour.
Sure.
Sleep is hard for me, but that's actually a new focus for me. Is I was really purposeful about that, and then kind of fell off the wagon with traveling and things getting in the way. And I've been trying to aim for 8 hours a night, and it's been really great. So
good for you.
Wish
Sleep
me
is
luck,
huge.
but it's good.
Yeah, sleep is huge, man. Working out, exercise, one thing. The recovery, the rest, that's just as big, if not bigger. I'm gonna. So if I heard you correctly, Val, earlier you said yoga, strength training, and walking. Those are your kind of 3 go-tos. Yeah.
Those are the big ones. Yeah.
And let me put you on a spot just a little bit more. Is on per week? Would you say, hey, man, I try to get 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days? Like which? I know I'm putting you on your spot. What do you go
every
for?
day, every day. Yeah, honestly, because it really is a priority for me. And whether it's yoga or walking, that to me, like it gives me that vibrancy and I feel alive, but I also feel like it's centering. It's therapy.
Absolutely.
So I go every day if I can, and I'm not crazy about it if there are weeks where like I was just sick. I didn't work out for like 2.5 weeks and I missed it, but I wasn't like, oh my God, I have to go work out. Yeah. It's there when my body needs that, and I didn't need that when I was sick, and I was fine with that. Sure. But definitely almost every day if I can.
Sure. Even what you said, like, hey, even if it's just walking, I think sometimes we even minimize walking's phenomenal. Like studies out of, and you probably see studies out of like University of Illinois, activity in the brain. Literally 20 minutes of walking, the amount of hormonal, like physiological responses going on that makes a difference for creativity, energy, confidence, whatever. In 20 minutes of walking. So guys, let's not minimize like, I can only walk.
Walking is the best.
There's tons of value there. Val, let me ask you this. As far as staying on the whole health idea, health discussion. This year, we're about to end 2016. I'm curious if you're open to share. What was your number one fitness or health goal this year? We're almost coming to an end. And what's it looking like for next year? Is it the same, different? What's that?
The one actual goal that I had like on my bucket list, my vision board for the year was to do a handstand.
Nice.
I don't know I think it's fitness. And I did it. I learned. So nice. Shout out to my Airbnb host turned friend Stuart in Portland at WDX who taught me how to do a handstand, which was really fun. Other than that, I feel like I'm in a good place. So it's just kind of like doing what I'm doing. I haven't had any marathons in the works for a while. Like in the past, that's been a goal, but right now I'm not training. And I love doing that. But it just, again, it's not a priority now. Like walking and strength training is, and I'm fine with that. For next year, I've been thinking about that. Again, I kind of feel like I'm in a good place. And so I like to do new things. So I like to find a way to challenge myself. I'd love to take more classes, actually learn self-defense.
Nice.
Which I think is a great form of fitness, but also has multiple other benefits too. So that's on my list.
Sure. Yeah, those are all handstand martial arts. Those are all fun. It's not your traditional, I'm going to run a 10. Nothing wrong with that either, but it's it's just different. I like that. That's awesome. Let me ask you this. Aside from health, right? Aside from, we're alive. It's awesome. You're alive. You have your health. Aside from those two, what are you most grateful for today?
Oh my gosh,
at this
so
moment.
Many things. 2 things?
I know, yeah. I know there's a lot.
Yeah,
what comes to mind?
My health, the nonprofit, Ryan Banks Academy, my clients, or freaking amazing. I have really cool clients. I love them. They're really amazing people doing really cool things.
Yeah.
I love living in Chicago. Actually, today, Time Out magazine said that we were voted the #1 most fun city in the world, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
I feel very lucky to get to live here, and I live kind of like right in the heart of downtown. So it's always, I don't know, I get to be like a tourist and see all the beautiful things people travel from all around the world to see, like every day, which is really cool. Those are the big ones. I mean, a lot to be grateful for. I love my yoga practice and my yoga studio and my friends and family and great food and the holidays.
Yeah, you can just go. I know. Listen, I get it. I respect that. We could go on and on. I'm just curious. Yeah, what those. But no, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that, and I love every time you do pan, because Chicago is a beautiful city. I've only been once. Would love to go back, but every time, you know, your I think it's your Instagram account, you pan and kind of show like what's going on. It just looks super cool. So I absolutely love that.
Come back.
Yeah, no, I have to. Absolutely will. One more question. I got actually maybe two more, but one question is, right now, currently, or maybe you just finished reading one, or you're currently reading a book you have either actually just recently read or currently reading. What is that?
So, the last book I've read is not entrepreneur or fitness related, but I actually think that it is.
Yeah.
In the way that it was about improv. So I think you know that I just did improv work. I took a training and I performed on stage, not with the intent of doing it professionally, but I wanted to challenge myself.
Love it.
Loved it. Absolutely fell in love with the process. Not because I'm a really talented improviser, but I mean, I could just go on and on about, I think, the implications that it has had in all parts of my life. And I'm now a huge believer that everyone should do improv. Like, we're building it into our curriculum for the school. I'm making my clients go. So the last book that I read was actually, I think, called Improv or The Art of Improv or something simple like that. But yeah, I think for anyone listening who has ever considered it, do it. Because so much, if you haven't considered it, I can kind of like put money down that you will eventually do that.
Talk about getting out of your comfort zone, man. That's awesome. Yeah, just getting up there and, you know, I kind of related. The way I can kind of relate to it is Toastmasters. When I used to have to be up there speaking, I used to be like nervous as heck. But you know what? Kind of got me out of that shell. So I'm sure that's a little bit more. You had a lot more people in front of you than I used to have at Toastmasters. But how many people were you performing for?
Almost 800. And so, I started with Toastmasters, and when I started with Toastmasters back when, that was also very fearful for me.
Sure,
and it takes a while to like build up your comfort zone. And now I can comfortably speak in front of 1,000 people and I feel fine. But the difference for me with improv was you can't plan for it. I like to plan. I like to kind of like control the environment, and you can't do that with improv. Amazing. And so that was the fear, it was like being on stage but doing something totally unknown, this big question mark, and not knowing what you're going to get thrown. And I mean, you literally kind of take suggestions from the audience like you do when you go to a show or see it on TV. And so the fear of like, am I not going to freeze? Am I not going to like freak out and know what to do? So you learn a lot of skills about how to be in the moment and how to respond in different environments, but also learning to trust yourself. That's really important.
I love that, man. First of all, I commend you for doing that. I think I do a lot of nutty things, but I don't know, that one I would really have to like really think about. But I commend you big time for doing that. I want to, Val, I got one more question for you, and I kind of want to, it's just kind of a fun one and kind of almost put you on the spot, not to embarrass you, but somehow, and actually, hopefully you can share with us.
You can embarrass me.
You managed to land yourself on a side of like buses or a couple buses, your face, just you on the side of buses, like going through Chicago. Like, can you explain, one, what that was all about and how you were able to get that to happen? That was incredible when I saw that.
I will, and I'll tell you why I'm not embarrassed about that. So it is kind of goofy that I'm on the side of a bus because I don't care about things like that, but I'll tell you why I'm happy to talk about it. I saw on TV that they were doing an audition for this project called the I Am Chicago campaign, which is just a media campaign that is mostly in Chicago but also nationally. And they were looking for people, like not like models or actresses, but looking for people who'd done interesting, innovative things. And I thought, I do think what we're doing is innovative. Maybe I should apply, and if we got it, it'd be great exposure for the school. And so I went kind of on a whim, like I normally would never do something like that. And I stood in line for over 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
It was such a long process. Everyone that I met in line was amazing and talented and doing something really exciting. And the whole time, I will admit that there was this thing in my head, like, they're really freaking slim. Like, and I actually had another big event that night that I needed to go to, and I was like, I'll just cut and run. But for some reason, I stuck it out and actually kind of thought I blew the audition. It was like 9 o'clock at night. I was exhausted from being in heels all day, and thought, that was a waste of my time. But I'm glad I did it so that I know that I at least put myself out there. So they called, and I was chosen as one of the faces of this campaign. And the reason I tell that story, like the backstory of it, is because that's what I come back to, the moments where I feel like something is a long shot. Because there were hundreds, almost 1,000 individuals that auditioned for this, and they chose a handful of us to be the face of this. And I did not get chosen because I was like better in any way. Like, believe me, everyone there in line was really fantastic. I'm so honored and grateful that it worked out that way. But for me, that's the moment of like, okay, you want to quit right now? Well, what if you had quit when you were standing in line and you were tired and thought that there was no chance in hell you could get it? Wow. You wouldn't have gotten that bus and all of the great things that have come with that.
Wow. What so much value there. So much thanks for sharing that. It's funny because we were talking about it, like, in a funny way, but the value in that story is awesome. Like, you don't know unless you try, and you went, and now I love that it wasn't just a one-time thing. I love that you come back to it time and time again with other things. Like, well, what if I had?
Oh, yeah.
That is so cool. It's cool that you're on the side of a bus, but the story behind it and the lessons you learn, that is so cool. And FYI, I love your humility, that saying, hey, I love your humility. That's one of the many reasons why, I think you're successful. You're awesome. So, Val, this has been like this, everything that you've shared with us today, huge value, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to share, like, your wisdom and everything, you're going through, have gone through with myself, with the Wellness Bucket community. So thank you so much for joining us today. I want to, before we go, what's the best way people can connect with you, the Ryan Banks Academy, your coaching practice? What's the best way they can contact, get a hold of you?
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
So regarding my coaching practice, which is my life coaching work, my speaking, I do workshops that it would be, the website is valeriegroth.com. So VALERIEGROTH.com. The email is val@valeriegroth.com. I'm active on Instagram, which is at Valerie Groth. I'm not as active on Facebook and Twitter, but I'm there. And for my nonprofit, that's ryanbanksacademy.org. And then the email for that is info@ryanbanksacademy.org. And we are on social media as well, which is at ryanbanksCHI, like Chicago.
Perfect.
So if anyone has any questions or wants to talk further about anything, I'm happy to talk.
Yeah, I highly suggest. It's such a cool, everything you're doing just from your own coaching practice and even the Ryan Banks Academy. I highly recommend people, guys, check out Valerie's work. It's just inspiring, to say the least. So again, Valerie, thank you so much for your time. This was cool for me personally, and I know it's going to make a difference for others watching as well. So again, thank you so much.
You're so welcome, and thank you, Mike. It was so fun to be here.
Of course. Thank you, Valerie. Cheers.